Hi, and welcome to The Leader's Edge. When we consider the problems impacting us on a global scale, we may break it down to a crisis in values. This is on an individual level that is impacting all of us collectively. This week, we get to talk with Tonia Gooding. She is the president of Communities Alive, and she's on a mission to tackle our values crisis. If you feel if you feel like your company's values are just nice words on a wall and believe that the lack of values is affecting us from the parliament to the classroom, stay tuned. Before I turn you over to Georgia to introduce our lovely guest, I invite you to respond with your rating on this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is high, how would you rate your company right now on how well it is living its values? Georgia.
Thank you so much, Emily. Good morning. Tonia Gooding, it is a pleasure having you on the show this morning. And for those of you out there who are watching, who are listening, you're not going to believe that everything I say after this relate to one person. Everything will relate to this one person. When you look at this lady, would you believe she's a mother of six? You wouldn't. I said five boys and one girl. Yes, young adults down to one who is now moving into high school very soon. And here's the interesting thing: she moved from industrial engineering to now working with in marriage and education and family. She has a master's in marriage, education, and family. She is president and local trainer for an NGO called Communities Alive, and they deal with education and training for young people. And that's a local representative for international association or organization called Alive to the World.
Mhm.
Tonya is here with us to talk this morning about values in action. And it's so interesting that you're talking about values in action because we are seeing now, Tonya, in our society, in our local Trinidad society, and right across the Caribbean region, where there is this devaluing of values in organizations. People are wondering, what does this organization stand for? So, Tonya, what is it about values that intrigues you? Talk to us about it.
Okay, so thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. In terms of values, what I like to differentiate is between values and the living of values or virtues, right? So I like to clarify in the beginning that a value system is something most people have. We value honesty. I believe loyalty is very important to me as a person.
Mhm.
However, only when we embody, when we actually practice being loyal to someone else or being honest, do we embody the actual virtue of loyalty or honesty. So that's the difference. Value is external, whereas virtues are actually the personalized living out of the habit. So, in other
Uh-huh.
words, values lived become virtues,
We
right?
love
So,
that.
yeah, so that is something I think many people miss, that they have value systems, but actually it's the living out of it that is the crucial point. And I think that's mainly where organizations and where I come in, where it begins, and the family sometimes are not fully on board, or fully appreciate how you actually have to live it out in order for it to be a reality for yourself as well as your environment. So part of my story would have been actually realizing that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world.
Yes.
Yes. So in terms of being a parent, that is one of the most important or crucial roles any of us as parents will ever perform.
Oh,
Mhm.
And the
yes.
analogy to that would be the leader of an organization, the leader of
Yes.
a family. Yes. And
Mhm.
just like an organization will have a motto or value system by which they abide, families should have that as well. Being more proactive, being who do I want my children to become? Yes. By an adult age, by 18, and so forth. And
Yeah.
that is where I think the whole idea of what do we as families, as parents need in terms of having the core element to change society is where when I studied marriage, education, and family, everything kind of fell into place.
So, Tanya, why did you choose to switch to marriage and family? And like, why even study it? I mean, I know you mentioned family is very important to you, and I'm curious as to is that was that the drive and the hand that rocks the cradle? So, was it like over time, as your family grew, you decided it's sort of like you led to this, you were led on this path? I mean, what's the what's the passion below this desire to and even to impart this across, because you do this in schools, you do this all over all over the place with the NGO. When I say all over the place, I mean you're trying to actually live your value of and share this. So I'm curious, what is the value that you're living by sharing it, and how is it connected to you?
Okay, well, I think that when you have a passion, opportunities present itself,
Yeah.
right? And yes, at the time I studied marriage, education, and family, I had children at tertiary, secondary, primary, and preschool. So
Wow.
I had
Wow.
a glimpse of what is really lacking in their education, right?
Right.
Because apart from my own family, of course, friends and their own children, we'd share conversations and so forth. And then when I studied my program, which of course came about purely by chance, I
Yeah.
think another NGO, Caribbean Institute for Family Development, offered me a scholarship because I think they thought I could fit into some role in a school as an advisor in years to come. And I got a large family scholarship discount from the
Yeah.
actual university that exists, 5 children over.
A
Um,
benefit for having 5 children at that time.
yes, it does. As I said, everything worked out.
Works out. Yeah.
Yes. So while I was doing the program, I actually had my thesis, and my thesis was on virtues lived out in Trinidad and Tobago. A
Hmm.
comparison of a book called Character Education by David Isaacs, looking at the virtues lived out in Trinidad. So
Ah.
that was an eye opener. My children at school was another eye opener. Everything coincided at the same time that ideally this definitely is needed, a program of this nature, educating parents as well as teachers as well as students on the significance of virtues being lived out, was necessary for Trinidad. And I started off just at schools talking about ethics and so forth. And then I attended World Congress of Families, and Kristen Evolmer, the founder of Alive to the World, was present. I
So
introduced
then you
myself.
found.
Why reinvent the wheel? Everything already exists. And that is how
Wow.
everything started about 11
Awesome.
years.
Look at how things lined up.
I know,
Wonderful.
right? So
Tanya,
I want to ask, sorry, Georgia, I want to just ask one thing.
go right ahead.
The curiosity is, I mean, I kind of know what you're going to say, but I would love you to say it. What did you find when you did your thesis? Which virtues did you look at? And you don't have to go into the whole thing of us, of course, but I'm just curious because I mean, we kind of know, but I'd love to hear from you because you did the research.
Yes, yes. So I only highlight two because it was 48 virtues, literally, the book was
Wow.
on, right? So
Mm.
it's highlighted some more than others.
Yes.
So two of my main ones, I think you would understand, was of course I call it our 9 day wonder, right?
Mm.
We in Trinidad love to talk about things, and we talk about it for 9 days and then we move on to something else.
Oh, yes.
There's very seldom a call to action, very seldom something concrete we can do. And many times, even if it's just talking about something that we saw that we're unhappy with, we'll just crawl around the topic ourselves. And
Yes.
sometimes a
So,
very good solutions, very good
Yes.
ideas being presented, but it's just within our circle. And
The
I've asked
gallery
people,
talk.
yeah, we're
so,
good at talking. So I've asked people
wonderful.
more than once, why don't you write to the papers? Why don't you call in a program? Why don't we say something that your ideas reach further than just this intimate circle? So that particular virtue, I would say, is almost like lack of perseverance, lack of courage to have your voice be heard by a wider audience to actually make a difference, right?
Mm.
So that is one. And then, of course, the second one was our carnival culture. Yes,
Mhm.
that we have so much beauty to showcase, and this it was over 15 years ago when I wrote this, you
Yeah.
know, but what are we allowing? Lack of chastity, lack of modesty, lack of temperance to step in to cloud what could be so much of our creativity and
Yes, the
beauty and
richness.
culture. Exactly. To be on display.
Yes.
So those were two that definitely stood out, but of course, there were many others.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Tonya, in 5 minutes, the number of things that you have spoken about is going to take us another show to unpack all of this. The correlation I'd like to make, Tonya, with what you're saying is when an organization has their values on their website and they have it on the walls, but people in the organization are not feeling those values. It says that in the culture, it's not being lived out. And it's so important for people who are watching and listening to recognize what you're talking about. You also spoke about families having a motto. Let's hear a little bit more about that because that's a new and a unique one. Talk to us about a family having a motto.
Yes.
Sure, sure. Okay, so I originally got this idea from someone called James Stenson. And I read his books a lot as a young mother because I only came from sisters. And I had son after son after son. So I did a lot of reading, a lot of talking to people, and I found this to be a very good idea because this allows the family to share the ethos, to share the culture. So, of course, when they're young, the parents would make up the motto. So we used our surname because, of course, it has good in it. So that had a nice um, thread to build on. Um, but as children get older and you go through different phases, you can get them involved because, of course, they will also now understand what we are about as a family, where we want to go, and what particular values we would like to emulate to be belonging to this family.
Yeah.
So we started off with the name, realizing um, along good, right? We
Yes.
speak good of others, we act good towards others, something simple because my children are very
Yes.
small.
Yes.
And then, as I have young adults now, we went and saw somebody else's mottos that were much more um, empowering. Yes,
Right.
much more. This is really what we believe. And I
Yeah.
asked all my children to give an idea. And we were all more about now we have talents and gifts we should be giving back to society, right? So that is what our motto then became. So for every family, it's more along the lines of who do we would like to become as a family and give back to society. So it's more about the common good, not only about the narcissistic, about how great we can be, but what
Yes.
we would like to be as a family to give to society.
How
So
do
your
we
motto,
contribute?
yes, your
Yes.
motto should be along those particular lines, more
Yes.
altruistic.
Love
Yeah.
it.
And contribution always comes up when we talk about fulfillment. So when people speak to not feeling fulfilled, oftentimes it's because they might have achieved and they're doing okay and they're probably doing great, but they're not feeling that sense of being able to contribute to something bigger
Yes.
than themselves, to give back in some way, and they will be so surprised that those actions always fills them.
That's right.
Yes. That is
With
so
that.
true.
Yeah, yeah.
That is so true.
I
Tony,
love
you
the.
said something else,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead,
very interesting.
Go
You said,
ahead. We love this
ask
topic.
young people, what do they want to become? So you're not asking them about their careers. What
No.
would you want your child to become? That's a powerful question to ask parents. Talk to us about the response that you get when you ask that question.
So okay, so yes, I was working at a school, and there was a role called advisor. So the advisor got to speak to the students as well as the parents. Right, it's a lovely idea that I think should be rolled out in most schools. And one of the questions when I was trained, we were told to ask parents very early on the first interview is who would you like your child to be at age 18? What character traits would you like them to possess? We're not talking career, we're not talking anything else. And in my experience, 95% of parents never thought about it. Never occurred to them in terms of looking forward, who, that kind of proactive parenting, who you would like your child to become. And what we actually were advised is that you need to give parents time to think. So if you bring it up at the beginning and they don't have an answer, bring it up at the end. And then when at least they give you, I used to narrow it down, give me two. Just give me two character traits you'd like your child to possess by age 18. And when they gave them to me, I would then say, well, what are we doing now? What are you doing now as parents to help them possess these things? Yes. So it's one thing to have the idea. Another thing is to be able to put it into practice.
To cultivate
Yes.
it, to
And
cultivate, to
that,
Cultivate
practice it,
it.
and
That's
that
it,
exactly.
Andy.
yeah.
And that goes along with the whole pedagogy behind the Alive to Will program. It's
Mm-hmm.
knowing, accepting, and doing. So
Mm-hmm.
that is how virtues are caught, not taught.
I
Children
love
need to
that. Virtues are
know.
taught, not
Yeah.
taught.
Yes,
Love
children need
that.
to know what the
Virtues
virtue
are caught,
is.
not
Yes, at an
taught. Yeah.
intellectual level, but they also need to desire it to be able to put it into practice. So it's a whole different pedagogy of understanding and living out the virtues, because the way the program uses it would be through stories. So the children identify with the characters, identify with the lesson learned, and how the virtues lived out. Then there's discussion about the characters. What would you do? Why would you make this choice? So that also develops critical thinking, that puts them in the shoes of others to develop empathy, right?
Yes.
So they're actually living out the story and putting themselves in the situation, making decisions and defending their decisions. And
Yes.
then after the discussions, we normally have activities that you actually role play or see what you would do in a situation,
Mm-hmm.
or give advice to somebody else who's in the situation, and so forth. So that process can be emulated in the home in terms of the role parents play in living out the virtue, the discussions the parents can have with the children of why this virtue is particularly important, why we believe that all of us need to live it out in terms of how it can benefit others, how it can cause discipline and self control in the choices we make, and
Yes.
then concrete ideas to put it into practice. Because that
Wow.
is it. You need to develop the habit of living out that particular virtue for it to become a reality.
Yeah,
So
because
that's the
it's the
three steps.
habits. Yeah, because it's the habits that create who we are, right? When
Yes.
it's what we do every day. So when somebody knows you, they know this is how Tanya is. This
Right.
is what is expected because of how she shows up every day. How we each do, right? So I love that. I mean, you're bringing it. You have brought it to schools. I mean, I think you've been doing this program now for what, more than 7, 8? How many years now?
Yes, well, close to 10 years. We started
Close
before
to
the
10 years.
pandemic, and
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that was
And
our
it's in
first
primary and
pilot.
secondary schools that you've been
Yes,
doing
well,
them.
right now
Oh,
only two secondary schools.
yeah,
Yes.
but wonderful. So both primary and secondary schools, and now you're thinking of rolling this out to parents too, so
Yes.
that parents can also have tools, because sometimes we go to school, and I love how the program is. The children get to engage with this material and think for themselves, which is awesome, because I think, as you said, the very first thing was that as a society, you are not seeing us thinking and being able to speak out and
Yes.
get involved, and engage in our democracy as we could. We have the ability to. We're educated enough, but we just don't do it,
We
right?
go out, we stay in. Yes.
Yeah. So I love that you're doing both, the schools and the parents, and you're thinking of doing the parents now. You want to talk to us a little bit about that in terms
Sure.
of how you're transitioning the program, or maybe widening the net a bit.
Widening.
Yes, kind of widening the scope.
Yeah, the
Yes.
scope.
So last year we launched our first focus on post SE students,
Mm.
helping them in terms of transitioning between primary and secondary level. And we realized this is a crucial stage in our nation's children's development.
So
So the
needed.
Definitely. Yeah. So the triangle is parent, teacher, and child. So it's all three we really need to target in terms of making this transition
Right.
seamless. So last year we targeted over 100 schools, looking at training the teachers, equipping them with the books, right at the beginning of the third term after the essay exam is finished, so that they would be able to teach the program for that third term to help the children
Right.
focus on, of course, all the virtues of being the best version of myself. What are my talents? All those areas that you need to understand, help build your self-esteem, build your sense of self and your identity before you go in at the bottom rung in Form 1 into secondary school. So it focuses on many different areas and virtues to build that are important. So what we realize that we need to accompany this transition to the parents. We need
Right.
to educate the parents in helping the children as well focus on these areas. So what we're thinking of this year is in the July August period having workshops for the same post SC parents whose children may be doing the program as well, but also open it out to any parents who are going through the transition, because we could also provide books for them that they could actually share the stories at home and things like that as well, to help with that transition in terms of educating through the stories, through their narrative, through their actual modeling the behavior, etc., of what particular criteria and habits you want to build to have that healthy transition between primary and secondary school.
Hmm,
Right.
that's wonderful because I think nowadays parents need a lot of help, and there's so many challenges facing all of us, and the children are not excluded from it.
Certainly not.
And parents, we don't like so many things. We don't get trained in the most important things that we have to do.
Yes.
you know so
Well,
I'm so happy that you are also providing this kind of support, the idea of a family motto. I mean, some people could even look at it, do I have an individual motto for myself, first of all, because you must lead
Yes.
yourself before you're leading your family, right? So curious, do we have an
Mm-hmm.
individual motto and then a
Mm-hmm.
family motto, like if you never thought of it or heard of it before. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what, I heard of it from Tony before, and I don't know that many families may have adopted this, but I hope it becomes
Yes.
widespread.
Yes. And Emily, let's talk about the teams. A team. You have it in your team as
Team
well. This is a
motto,
motto
yeah,
for my team. And
yeah,
it spreads right across the
yeah,
organization.
yeah. And within the companies also, to take from what Tanya and what you brought up, Georgia, it's
Mm-hmm.
we can complain that the companies don't live the values, but
Yes.
we living the values as part of the company, because
Who
the
are the people to
values
live it?
is
It's
every
all of
single
us.
one of us, every
Yes.
single one. Or even call out somebody, say, hey,
Mhm.
that is
Yes.
not like in line with our values. Like
Mm-hmm.
curious what would
Mm-hmm.
happen if we started talking and asking those questions, to sort of remind ourselves that it's not just something on the wall that's pretty,
Right.
but it's who
It
we
has
are.
to be lived. It has to
Who
be
we are.
lived.
Yeah.
Tanya, the last thing I want you to do before you leave is to take us back through that head, heart, and hand. What
Yeah.
each one represents, because we need to let our audience leave with that.
okay. So the head, heart, and hand is the same thing as knowing, accepting, and doing. Right?
Knowing, accepting,
Accepting
doing.
and doing.
Doing.
Yes.
Yes, it's the same analogy as the head, heart,
Yes.
and hand.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of appreciating and understanding as well as living out a virtue, we
Mm-hmm.
first need with our heads to
Mm-hmm.
understand what the virtue is, to see
Yes.
it lived out, to realize what living out that particular virtue can result in.
Mm-hmm.
Then the heart or accepting is actually talking it through, feeling the desire that this is something I want for myself. So just
Yes.
as y'all were talking about a personal value system, a personal motto,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
yes, it's what we believe in and why we believe it's important. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the buying in here of
Right.
understanding the virtue, but also buying in and desiring to put it into practice and living it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the hand and the doing is actually practicing the virtue,
Mm-hmm.
looking for opportunities, presenting opportunities to our children to actually live out that particular habit. Because what theories have said, it's living out a habit over 20 something, I think it's 23 times consecutively,
Anyway.
makes it a habit.
Makes it,
So it's
yes.
repetition of
Yeah.
it
Yes.
that it can become then second nature. And
Yeah.
only
Love it.
then, the three processes unified, will you then develop the particular virtue.
Love it. Emily, I think that's it. If nothing else, if they get nothing else, they just got it from Tanya.
Yes. So,
Oh.
any particular, I mean, there's so many calls to action here. Any particular one you want people to take away, Tanya, before I do the wrap?
Well, just to realize, especially as parents, and the analogy with the office environment is that we are a team. And for teams to function at their optimal, we all have captains, we all have rules, we all have to realize that if we don't work together, that anyone who doesn't play their part, the whole team suffers. So that whole idea of unity, of teamwork, of that kind of spirit of cohesion and living out and learning, first of all, learning the virtues that are important and living them out is what can make society great, starting from the family and the ripple effect going out. So I'm just hoping, and I'll put in my plug at the end, that parents who want this for their own families will consider the training I'm offering,
Yes.
the workshop I'm offering in July and August to make it something that can be the reality for their homes, but also have that ripple effect for their wider community and the society of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And we'll have all of Tanya's links wherever you see this video so that you all could link with her to get the details for the workshop if that is something you want.
Yes.
So to wrap, I think the title that we ended on, Values in Action, is the call to action.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so what are your values and how have you been living them? And if you haven't been living them, then what can you do to make a difference there? And it starts with each and every one of us. So instead of us worrying or complaining about breakdowns in our society, we can all actually do something about it.
Yes.
So let us start. I mean, you can mentor if you don't have families, right? So
That's
let
right.
us start. Let us start. You can learn this thing. You could be a volunteer with Tanya. All sorts of things can happen. So
One person at a time.
one person at a time. So people, thank you very much for your attention today. Tanya, thank you so much for being here and sharing with us.
Thank you. It's my
Um,
pleasure being here. I really
yes,
appreciated this.
yes. And everyone have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Have a wonderful week. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Tanya.
Bye. Take care.